Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into the Performance Lab. Don't forget to subscribe below to the right for updates to new videos.
Hey, what's up everyone? This is Morey Croson from the Performance Lab of California, and we're going to go ahead and do this breakdown here today. It's actually on myself. Going to be able to give you guys just a little bit more information about what we are looking for in that top end speed form. We're really going to go slow and giving you plenty of understanding of when we're talking about developing your speed and running faster. What are some of the key differences that I see within top sprinters? What are some of the things that I see in my own running that can improve, as well as what are some of the things that I think I do well and things that you want to be able to build. So, we'll go ahead and just hop right into it. And I'll get a little bit more on the technical side of, how we want to be able to actually run. So we'll start with this left leg here. Big thing that I really try to do when I'm running is I really try to create a large amount of dorsiflexion here within each one of my steps. So I really want to be able to keep this toe facing straight up as you're coming through. And what you could see, what happens is that as your hip gets to top hip flexion in the run, so notice how I'm getting by driving my knee up. The way I get to more hip flexion is by driving that knee up. So as I'm getting that to that point where my knee's at most hip flexion, now I really want to be able to drive that foot through, and then from that position, I'm really trying to keep my foot up as high as I can in the air as I drive my foot back down underneath me. You see I'm driving that foot down, so I want to try to land with my foot right underneath my hip. You can see mine's a little bit out in front of my hip, right? I'd say my hip's right here, my foot's right here. So you want to be able to get to the point where you're landing knee fairly straight. I'm not necessarily upset with where the flexion of my knee is, but I am a little bit, I can improve a little bit within the actual step and where that is. Just and in terms of the top end speed, I get to about 18.8 here in terms of miles an hour. My top is 19.2. So, still working on the speed. I'm very big on, if you're going to try to coach this, running and biomechanics, and you got to be able to do it yourself. And so I definitely am consistently working on my overall ability to run faster. So as we go through here, you can see we transition into allowing that back leg to go back behind me, right? And then the big thing with this is that you want to be able to get your heel pretty high up. You want to be able to straighten out your knee, right? And you want to also allow your knee to get back behind your hip. I see a lot of guys when they're pushing off, having that knee and hip right underneath each other, or they're not able to get to full extension within that back leg. So you really got to be able to get full extension within that back leg as you're pushing off. And then now when you push off, you want to spend the least amount of time as you can with the foot going upwards, right? It's going to actually naturally come upwards when you push off, but the less amount of time that you spend on that, the more time you could spend on driving that leg back forward, so now your heel can get right up underneath you. Another big mistake that I'll see is the foot gets a little bit too high up, which makes it so the overall movement's a little bit inefficient. You want to be able to get that foot to come forward and straight through. You don't want to have your foot to be too high or too low. I also see a lot of people who have their feet a little bit too low as they're transitioning through. So now as they get to this point, if this foot is closer to the ground, now you're not going to be able to really generate much force from this position. This is where a lot of the force ends up being generated, is once you get your foot out in front of you, now pulling on that leg to be able to interact with the ground. So now you're actually creating force into the ground rather than just trying to try to reach and touch the ground. You can see as the speed continues to increase, there's more and more dorsiflexion as the leg is cycling through. Okay, the next big thing is with the arms, you want to be able to get the elbow up to the same height as the shoulder, right? And really being able to maintain a fairly 90-90 position, especially when your arms are going back. You want to be able to keep the arms going to a 90-90 position. And as you're generating force, you really got to be able to get into a good amount of extension within the lower back. I'm not huge on correcting like facial mechanics. Yeah, you can be a little bit more resting in the face, but there's also guys like Justin Gatlin who are very tense in the face when running. So there's not only one way to do it. There's people that have been tense in their face that do really well, and there's people that aren't tense in their face that do really well. All right, but here you're really trying to get a lot of extension within the lower back. I see a lot of people that are limited within the extension of the low back, which makes it so then you're not able to get as much extension within the hip, and it also makes it so then when you're pushing off, you push off with your your hip in really too much extension, right? So if you don't have the range of motion in the lower back, then you over extend within the hip. So now when you push off, your foot is way back behind the rest of your body, which ruins your front end mechanics. But the big thing about your front end mechanics, or when the time with your foot spent in front of you, right? So front end mechanics would start the second that my foot crossed the midline, right? And what ends up happening is that you almost want to, the top sprinters have a ratio where they're spending more time in front end mechanics on each step, not back end mechanics. Okay, what does that mean? That means that they're spending more time trying to gain ground, right, with their foot out in front of them than they're spending with their time back behind them. Now, a lot of novice runners spend more time with their foot behind them than they do with their foot than they do with their feet out in front of them. So they're not picking up as much overall distance per step is one thing, and they end up not being able to create as much force, because this is what the front end mechanics is, where you end up creating all the force into the ground. So if you don't have very much time spent in your front end mechanics, it limits your ability to generate overall force. Okay. Next big thing is that if you're going to be going into flexion, the time to go into flexion is here. So it's that pull phase when you're really trying to drive that leg back is when you can go into flexion within the mid back. But you still got to be able to maintain height. A lot of times I'll see people that will sink as they get into the top end speed. And even myself, I have to fight myself. And when I get going into the top end speed and really trying to run as fast as I can, really keeping my head tall and my body tall, because I get the tendency of wanting to allow my knees to sink and my body to sink. So you got to be able to fight that by really making it so when you're creating that pull with each one of your legs within the spine, you're still maintaining a good position within your head and chin. You don't want to allow your whole body to sink. You want to be able to keep everything upright. Notice the shoulder height doesn't change, but you're still being able to generate some force out of the core and the lower body. All right. You could also see there's a good amount of rotation that happens, and I know you can't see it as good from this position, but there's a good amount of rotation that happens within the spine as you're trying to pull these arms back. You don't want to end up, not being able to get your arms back and limiting your ability to get hip flexion. What makes it so you can get more hip flexion is your ability to really reach back with those arms, right? And then your ability to really push back off the ground and get vertical there is how you're moving with the front arm. So with the front arm, you really want to get that hand up to about your eye height as you're generating force here. So you don't want to end up, with your hands being too low, right? Or you don't want to end up with your elbows being too low. Both of those things end up being really, really important, as well as being able to maintain extension through your back, as well as being able to have the rotation within the back. And, all this ends up being a lot with core strength. I'd say the biggest thing that I've had to spend a lot of time developing is my overall core, to be able to maintain the hips and the range of motion within the hips, right? You can see there's a lot of disassociation with my leg and a lot of hip extension, while my other leg being in a lot of flexion, while also being able to create a lot of rotation within the spine and being able to maintain extension. By being able to do all of those things at one time, you got to be able to develop your core and develop your core in a way that develops a wide range of different ranges, right? So it can't just be, doing planks or doing sit-ups or things like that. You have to be able to, stabilize an anti-rotation. You got to be able to stabilize an extension. You got to be able to stabilize an flexion. A lot of different types of spine movements where you're challenging the ability for your core to work is what makes it so then you can end up developing a overall more effective sprint. So there's a lot that goes into this, guys. I just wanted to give you a breakdown it really goes deep in depth into some of the mechanics. Yeah, there's some things that may be different in comparison to the others, but for the most part, these are things that are pertaining specifically to developing top end speed and how you're able to maximize top end speed. All right, let me know if you guys have any questions, and we'll talk soon.
Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you really enjoyed it, and if you did, you could subscribe down below, and that way you can get updates on any of the new videos that we get. Also, if you want to, you can check out some of our other breakdowns for speed and throwing. We have exercises, also jumping mechanics videos, a lot of great stuff within our channel. Hope you enjoy.